Among all the news related to extraterrestrials that shake our planet, the most mysterious for specialists are the increasingly frequent reports of UAPs, unidentified underwater objects. UAPs have been spotted in various corners of the world, and they continue to rise from the water, encountering witnesses from all over the globe. Since the release of our last story about the emergence of UAPs, new astonishing facts, stories, and details concerning the most elusive group of UFOs have come to light. This occurred in the summer of 2000. My ship arrived in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, when I suddenly noticed three large, strange white lights in the water. This became the first confirmation of the existence of underwater anomalies in the waters of our oceans and seas. UAPs can leave numerous circles on the surface of the water. It is also becoming clear why one of the first American aircraft carriers with nuclear weapons on board, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, continued to attract UFOs and UAPs for over 30 years. I was on the aircraft carrier Franklin Roosevelt in 1958 and saw a UFO when we were at sea. From new reports of UFOs on the seabed to stories from a century ago, experts continue to scratch their heads. Who are the original inhabitants of this planet, us or them? The truth about Amanello, traces at depth. In early 2006, after watching a program about Amanello in the depths of the sea on the History Channel, 36-year veteran Chief Petty Officer Charles Howard contacted the channel, offering to share his stories about unusual, frightening, unidentified underwater objects. Chief Howard, who served for 17 years in the Navy, shares his story of the first encounter with a phenomenon that can be called a UAP. The History Channel was airing a program about UFOs and UAPs, and I was very glad because I also had an experience that I had not shared with anyone. I thought it would be interesting. In the summer of 2000, Howard's ship Thorn arrived at the Guantanamo base in Cuba after scheduled exercises. It was already late, around 10 o'clock, and I was returning to the ship. I was walking along the pier. That day I was very tired and wanted to return before everyone else to get some sleep. The path was long, and I found myself 30 steps ahead of everyone when I noticed a glowing white light out of the corner of my eye. I was walking, looking sideways, and it was glowing underwater. A glowing UAP usually appears 30 meters from the shore. Howard assumed that the object was only 3 meters away from him. As it approached, Howard could not determine whether it was man-made. At first, it emerged from nowhere, like a soft white glow. As I examined it, the glow became brighter and brighter. And suddenly, two more lights flared up behind it, almost in the shape of a triangle. One light here, one light here, one light there. At first, I was not afraid because I saw only one bright little light. I was just amazed. But then, when two more lights appeared behind, they began to move. That's when I got scared and shouted, "Hey guys, come here, look at this, I'm here." Other sailors responded to Howard's calls, but they were too late. The UFO disappeared beneath the water. Charles had never seen anything like it before and hopes he never will again. I have spent almost 17 years at sea and have never encountered anything like it. It was very strange. Such phenomena at sea are often observed in areas adjacent to the Santa Catalina Channel, near Los Angeles. Tomorrow we will go out to sea with divers to find evidence of the UFO sighting here in 1992 in the Santa Monica Bay area, on the 14th of June, 1992 at 10:24 in the evening. Many witnesses reported seeing over 200 bright disc-shaped objects quietly creating waves and hovering above the water before soaring into the sky. This incident was reported by phone to the local police in the Malibu area. Lost Hills Police Station. Has anyone reported any unusual incidents today? Could you clarify what unusual incidents you are referring to? Lights. Yes, what happened to you on your way home? I feel uncomfortable telling you because you will think I am crazy. In March 2006, Patrick Askert, Kevin Brune, and Julius Willis invited a journalist on a research expedition to discover unidentified underwater objects in the Santa Catalina Channel. The day before, at 9:37 in the evening, several silvery disc-shaped objects were spotted diving into the waters of the channel and resurfacing again. Along with them, ufologist and experienced sea captain William Burns, as well as researcher Preston Dennett, who had previously shared his observations of UFOs in the waters of Los Angeles in 1992, joined this expedition. The team was ready for the dive. Askert checked the equipment. "Do you have a Geiger counter?" he asked. "I have the equipment ready, we can go," Brun replied. They made sure they had masks, tanks, and an underwater camera before setting off. The researchers planned to study 2 areas of the channel. Askert and Brun were collecting samples, and Brun, as a research scientist, was supposed to conduct preliminary investigations on board and then complete them in the laboratory. "We need to dive underwater, collect samples, and find any evidence of underwater UFOs," noted Askert. In this vast, unexplored area known as the Redonda Trench, tracking UFOs was complicated due to the significant depth, reaching 1.5 kilometers. The sonar systems of most ships are unable to detect objects at such depths. The vessel, named Pacific Star, departed from the shores of Redonda Beach, California, at 8:37 in the morning, heading west into the dark waters of the Pacific Ocean. The crew struggled against strong winds and waves, and one crew member expressed concerns. "I am afraid that the wind will pick up. If the waves grow, then the distance to the bottom will change. This is very dangerous and could hinder the search." At 9:22 in the morning, the crew noticed something unusual on the surface of the water for the first time. "Look, wow, an amazing anomaly," exclaimed one of the crew members. A round vortex approximately 4.5 meters in diameter formed on the surface, constantly pulsating, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. "You may not believe it, but there have been numerous UFO wrecks here, at least 40 or 50. So it is quite possible that there is something here, including debris from UFOs." The captain ordered to anchor 2 nautical miles from that spot. "We want to find out if there are any wrecks on the bottom of the trench, if there are any traces left on the ground, if the radioactive background has changed, if there are any strange objects," he explained. "Last night, an object was spotted in this location, and if it left anything behind, the team planned to bring samples to the surface for further investigation. However, visibility underwater was very poor, only 1.5 to 3 meters. I could hardly see anything while we were down there," admitted Askert. Despite this, he collected samples for testing. "I saw nothing, just the beam of my flashlight, which was lost in the darkness," he added, feeling discomfort in the impenetrable dark. Due to the poor visibility, the group decided to move another 6 to 5 kilometers further in search of a more suitable location for research. "If you need to hide, this is the best place," noted one of the divers. As visibility underwater worsened, the divers prepared a more sensitive camera for filming at greater depths. "Here is your camera." "I have already installed it," said one of the team members, preparing for the next dive. Setting the equipment to maximum sensitivity in low light was critically important. If there is anything in the ocean, it must be visible. The divers were collecting samples from the bottom, examining them for chemical traces and radioactivity. Unidentified underwater objects, or UWO, leave traces behind, and they may be magnetically active or have a high electric charge. In this location, the better visibility allowed the divers to gather material, and at that moment, they noticed something unusual. One of the expedition members, expressing satisfaction, said, "I am pleased with what we have collected. It was necessary to measure the radiation level using Geiger counters. Great. Everything here is clean. There is a lot of bottom sediment. Look, I have something," he added, as the counter indicated a radiation level exceeding the norm. "Now further research is required. The rest will be done in the laboratory. No wonder UWO chooses this area." "It is easy to hide here," reflected another participant. "We do not know what the outcome will be until we check everything, but it is a long process. We are trying to test our hypotheses by conducting rigorously controlled experiments. We are trying to eliminate variables, but it is quite difficult to exclude all those variables we are dealing with. So for now, we are at the observation stage. But if something strange or requiring further study appears, we will return to it." Kevin, one of the researchers, agreed. "If you want to find something, you have to look." However, further research yielded inconclusive results. Nevertheless, due to the positive result of sample number 2, a more serious expedition was planned for the fall of 2006. "We need to go back." Among all the achievements of American shipbuilding after World War II, few could surpass the aircraft carrier Franklin Delano Roosevelt in power and technical specifications. Commissioned on the 27th of October, 1945 in New York, this ship, displacing 64,000 tons and measuring 304 meters in length, became the first nuclear-armed carrier in the history of the fleet. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a very powerful ship in every sense of the word and became a floating laboratory for the entire naval fleet. According to many sailors who served on this ship, due to its unique characteristics, it found itself at the center of one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. One of the former sailors, Rusinski, had no doubt about the existence of UFOs and their attempts to make contact with the ship. Many sailors on the ship found themselves in the same situations I experienced. There is a clear connection between the aircraft carrier, nuclear weapons, and UFO sightings. Nuclear weapons seem to attract UFOs. Rusinski served on the aircraft carrier from July 1958 to December 1960 as a firefighter and technician. He recalls his first contact with a large object resembling a UFO in September 1958 in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We were on the lower deck. It was around 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. It had gotten dark. A few guys rushed in from the engine room and my friend Vince said, "Hey, come up and see what's going on." I followed them up to the hangar deck and then to the flight deck. Rusinski saw a UFO in the shape of a cigar moving at incredible speed towards the ship. The object moved silently and maneuvered in a way that was not like a typical aircraft. We were not conducting any flight operations. The flight deck was quiet, and this thing was flying straight towards us, and I saw a light as it approached our ship. There were a series of windows with figures inside. They got so close that I felt warmth and noticed that the beings looking at us were non-humans. Then the object changed color to a bright red-orange, and Rusinski noticed its shape. It was in the shape of a cigar. It was changing color. He reported that this bright, UFO-like object emerged from the water and moved silently for 45 seconds before flying away. About 25 of Rusinski's shipmates witnessed this phenomenon, and most of them were soon transferred off the ship. Rusinski claims that within a few hours after the incident, the ship's log was rewritten. He recalls that when he took the log, much had already been erased. There was nothing there, he says, adding that the witnesses who were transferred off the ship signed some non-disclosure papers, although he was not asked to do so. Probably because I didn't talk, he notes, emphasizing his caution. 50 years later, his search for answers to the question, "What happened that night?" continues. "I am still trying to find those guys from the flight deck," he shares, noting that he did not sign any papers and was not transferred off the ship. "I have so many questions. What was it? Why?" His voice is filled with determination as he explains why he has spent so much time searching. Rusinski is not alone in his conviction that during his service on the ship, he saw a UFO. Another veteran, Harry Jordan, served on the ship from 1962 to 1965 as a first-class seaman. As a radio man, he was entrusted with working on the most powerful radar system in the world, capable of jamming anti-ship missiles and suppressing powerful radars. Jordan recounts that in 1963 he witnessed another incident involving a UFO that remains a mystery to this day. One thing is certain, Roosevelt attracted UFOs due to its technical equipment and weaponry on board, including nuclear, he asserts, preparing to share his mysterious and thrilling story. "I remember this case and all the details because such things are not forgotten," says Jordan, recalling the events of October 2, 1963, off the coast of Sardinia. The time was around 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was watching his radar screen. "Everything was fine until suddenly a contact appeared on the radar," he recalls. "The object was at an altitude of 24 kilometers, practically unreachable for most aircraft. The first signal on the radar screen appeared around 2:30. The object was 1,000 kilometers from the ship at an altitude of 24 kilometers, then 500 kilometers at an altitude of about 10 kilometers, and finally 100 kilometers at an altitude of 34 kilometers from the ship on the port side," Jordan continues. He reported this to the officer of the watch, who came, tracked the entire process, confirmed his observations, and reported to the duty officer on the bridge. After that, the duty officer woke the captain, and the object began to descend. The object on my radar screen accelerated to a speed that no aircraft could withstand, says Jordan. This thing covered 16 kilometers in a matter of seconds and was moving at a speed of 6,500 kilometers per hour. He describes how the object made angular turns to the right, following a trajectory resembling the letter Z, as if someone had fired in its line of sight. The object had no signature, which seems strange, he adds. After his report, Captain Roosevelt ordered a pair of Phantom fighters to be launched to take a closer look at the strange object. The planes lifted off the carrier deck on afterburner and one by one ascended into the sky, recalls Jordan. The fighters set a course of 12, and he felt that something unusual was happening, beyond the realm of normal flight operations. The Phantoms, being 32 kilometers from the location, attempted to establish visual contact with the object. The object on my radar screen continued to approach the ship before disappearing after a brief flash, he says. It appeared on the right screen in the flight control post, then the contact began to fade away over the course of 20 to 30 seconds, after which I heard one of the pilots say, "What the?" And that was all I heard. A moment later, the target returned, disappeared just as quickly, and then it became larger and closer. Barely had the planes landed, the contact appeared again from the stern, and someone in the control post shouted, "What the hell?" recalls Jordan, emphasizing that about 15 people were sitting there with binoculars, observing this mysterious phenomenon. At 2 hours 32 minutes in the night, before the eyes of the crew of the aircraft carrier Roosevelt, an unidentified submerged object hovered momentarily in the air at a distance of about 30 meters from the ship before disappearing. One of the crew members, Jordan, describes that moment. "I saw an object in the shape of a Z, then it stopped, blinked, and then disappeared." Jordan, with experience working with electronics from Soviet, Korean, and Chinese aviation, asserts that if it had been a meteor, it would have burned up in the atmosphere. "I would have seen the characteristic streaks on the screen, but everything just vanished within 2 to 3 seconds, he adds. In the ship's log, Jordan records the incident as a UFO sighting. A few seconds later, the ship's commander approaches him. "Jordan, what did you write in the log?" he asks. "I had a UFO. I recorded the contact number and showed it to the commander," Jordan replies. However, the commander ordered the entry to be removed. "My commander agreed with me, but not in everything." "Yes, Jordan, that's how it was. Jordan, no one should know about this," he says. Jordan, respecting his commander and the fleet, kept silent for a full 20 years. "It was a historic moment for the American fleet, and it was struck from the log," he emphasizes. Nevertheless, this is not the only case when Roosevelt encountered unidentified aerial phenomena. Over 32 years of its unusually short service, the aircraft carrier faced at least 6 similar incidents. Yes, Roosevelt seemed to attract unidentified aerial phenomena. It has seen quite a few aliens, notes Jordan. He interviewed 3 people who were aboard Roosevelt at the time when large UFOs were seen over the vessel. These witnesses observed the objects and reported them using the ship's electronics. Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the first aircraft carrier that permanently carried nuclear weapons on board, and it seemed that the appearance of UFOs was related to this factor. The first confirmation of this was obtained in the North Sea off the coast of England during NATO naval maneuvers. In September 1952, NATO began Operation Grotta Brass, the first multilateral collective exercise after the war. Roosevelt participated in these exercises off the coast of Denmark, where some of the most incredible UFO sightings in history occurred. The British Ministry of Defense also recorded this incident as a UFO sighting. The exercises involved 200 ships, 1,000 aircraft, and more than 80,000 military personnel from various NATO countries. The maneuvers were directed from Roosevelt, the largest and most advanced ship of that time. The aircraft carrier led a task force aimed at preventing Soviet submarines from passing through the North Sea into the Atlantic. However, there could have been a UFO base on the seabed of the North Sea, north of the European coast. "We were watching them and they were watching us," says Jordan. On the 13th of September 1952, the Danish destroyer Ville Moi was in the Baltic Sea north of the island of Bornholm. Suddenly, Lieutenant Commander Schmidt Essen and several crew members saw a triangular glowing object moving at high speed over the water in close proximity to the lead vessel. The bluish object headed west, then suddenly turned southeast, right towards Roosevelt. Over the following week, several more UFO sightings were reported in various locations, ranging from Denmark to the Operation Command headquarters in Scotland. On the 20th of September 1952, at 7:30 in the morning, 3 Danish officers observed a shining disc-shaped object rising from the water and flying overhead. This object was also heading towards the NATO fleet, specifically towards Roosevelt. The metallic-colored UFO quickly headed east and disappeared among the clouds. Less than a day later, on the 21st of September 1952, 6 British pilots noticed a glowing spherical object over the North Sea that rose from the water and quietly approached the formation of the squadron. They attempted to pursue it. However, the object quickly eluded capture. Veteran of Roosevelt, Jordan claims that more than 40 years ago he spoke with eyewitnesses who also witnessed these mysterious events. Connecting with 3 or 4 destroyers, the military could not understand what was happening when an object, nearly 500 meters wide, emerged from the water and damaged one of the ships. Later, reports of a collision between 2 destroyers surfaced, but according to an eyewitness, that was not the case. The operator stated that the damn thing popped out of the water and took off. According to reports, all these incidents shared one frightening feature. Witnesses felt that underwater objects were watching them from a close distance. After Operation Grotto Bra, numerous sailors and Air Force pilots, including members of the Roosevelt crew, reported their observations. This was a case where many people witnessed the appearance of UFOs. On board the aircraft carrier Roosevelt was an accredited journalist who comfortably observed the increased activity of UFOs through the lens of his camera. On September 20th, 1952, at 11 in the morning, several crew members noticed another rapidly moving spherical UFO that rose from the water into the air, right behind the fleet personnel. Journalist Ollie Slitvin, who was following the operation, aimed his Canon camera at the horizon and took 2 pictures of the swiftly moving discs, which seemed to defy all laws of gravity. It was said that naval specialists studied the photographs, but no official reports ever emerged. Wallace Litvin captured flying discs above the aircraft carrier Roosevelt during Operation Grotto Bra. The photographs show the object passing over the ship, and one can make out the island of the carrier and part of an aircraft's wing. In the images, it appears that a bright light is flying above the ship, but witnesses claimed that it was disc-shaped. The appearances of UFOs above the deck of the aircraft carrier Roosevelt during Operation Grotto Bras were not new to the officers and sailors of the ship. It was said that General Dwight Eisenhower also saw similar objects when he visited the carrier as a guest. Witnesses of the events were reluctant to speak about it, firstly because they were intimidated, and secondly, they did not want to appear foolish. According to experts, many documents regarding Operation Grotto Bras remain classified. The question arises, do the authorities have grounds to keep events from 50 years ago a secret? Militaries around the world perceived what was happening as a threat. It was said that if they could penetrate airspace, they could also infiltrate restricted areas. They fly faster than our fastest planes. Does this mean they are hostile? Although many veterans of the Roosevelt suspect that the unique characteristics of the ship attracted the attention of extraterrestrials, some are unclear whether all the observed activity can be considered evidence. Perhaps they too will believe that UFOs exist. Now, colleagues of Ivan Sanderson invite you on a journey. UAP, that is Unidentified Underwater Phenomena, is a phenomenon that has existed for a long time. My friend and colleague Ivan Sanderson began studying it quite some time ago. These beings constantly visit us, and this phenomenon is often mentioned in reports. In his book Invisible Residents, Ivan Sanderson put forth a chilling thought. These beings are not aliens. They are already among us. The research of the zoologist and former British intelligence officer continues to astonish and frighten both specialists and merely curious individuals. In his scandalous book Invisible Residents, published 70 years ago, Ivan opened our eyes to the terrifying realm of unidentified underwater phenomena. The foundation of Sanderson's book is built on 2 main theories of UAP. The first is that UAP are actually already here, either having evolved alongside Earth or having arrived from space a long time ago and settled in our oceans. When discussing underwater UFOs, it should be noted that 3/4 of the Earth is covered with water, and UFOs have been observed in all countries of the world. This makes the assumption that they utilize the oceans quite logical, as humanity has not yet fully explored this resource. Ivan Sanderson's research on UAP leads to unexpected conclusions. If more than half of UFOs have been spotted in or above water, it means that more than half of UFOs are essentially underwater objects. Sanderson claims that half of UFOs were seen specifically above water, which raises the question, is there an entire civilization of beings underwater on the planet for whom the ocean floor is as much a home as the territories we inhabit? He suggests that these inhabitants may have settled here long before the appearance of humans. To support his theory, Sanderson proposed the idea of several critical points on Earth that form unusual routes, which he calls pathological vortices. By identifying locations where ships and airplanes disappear, he noticed that the appearances of UAP are closely related to triangles where strange magnetic anomalies have been recorded. This made him wonder whether unusual beings live in these extraordinary places, known as triangles and vortices, and whether UAP have been observed there. The theory of vortices by Sanderson has yet another threatening aspect. Most anomalous zones are located in areas rich in water resources. He conducted research and found that along the line encircling the planet and passing through the geographic and magnetic poles, airplanes and ships most frequently disappear, as well as UFOs appear. After 17 years of research, Sanderson came to a surprising conclusion. There is a clear connection between the high frequency of reports of unidentified flying objects and areas with unusual gravitational fields or vortices. Among the specific zones where these phenomena occur are the mysterious triangles in the Bermuda, Japan, and Australia. Sanderson urges not to sit idly by, claiming that it does not exist, but instead to go out and prove it. He believes that the unusual magnetic zones of the Earth and the frequent appearance of UFOs are related. Some researchers define vortex zones as locations of UFO-based dislocations, which raises the question of the existence of underwater bases. Sanderson ponders whether these are indeed aliens from outer space and whether they interact with us. He believes that at different times there could have been zones with self-planetary equipment located deep underwater, allowing aliens to observe us while remaining unnoticed. Perhaps UFOs have long been on our planet, existing here long before us. One notable, albeit forgotten, case related to UFOs is the incident involving the vessel St. Andrew off the coast of the Canadian province of Nova Scotia on the 30th of October, 1906. The ship, crossing the Atlantic on a route from Halifax to Hamburg, witnessed a UFO. Sanderson described how at 4:30 in the evening the ship was attacked by a huge flaming object that zigzagged across the sky, then fell into the water and disappeared. According to him, it could not have been a meteor, as meteors do not move in zigzags and do not change direction. This case was reported in the New York Times. The assistant captain, V. Spencer, noted, "I have seen meteors all over the world, but I have never encountered one as large as this." Throughout his career, Sanderson was surrounded by an aura of mystery. He served in British intelligence, and many of his friends belonged to the Office of Strategic Services, which later became the CIA. As seen from his books, Sanderson had connections in intelligence and received information from them. Until his death in 1973, he continued to travel the world in search of unidentified underwater objects. Some ufologists believe that high-ranking government sources provided information for research to Ivan Sanderson. Many still wonder whether he remained in intelligence, continued to participate in expeditions, and used his connections to obtain new information for his book. By the end of his life, worn down by cancer, Sanderson became a victim of both friends and foes who appropriated his legacy. Many came to his home, conversed, and asked to read documents, but they never returned them. The disputes over this matter continue to rage. Is there any truth to the claim that secret government agents took Sanderson's documents to destroy one of the best collections of evidence for the existence of underwater UFOs? Initially, Sanderson perceived UFOs as beings inhabiting the air, but by the end of his career, he began to think of them as highly developed, intelligent beings from space. According to experts, one of the most impressive features of UFOs is their ability to alter and move the surface of the water, similar to how UFOs leave distinctive circles and fields. An interesting aspect is how UFOs leave traces on the water. These objects leave marks both on water and on ice, creating a real similarity between the traces on UFO landing pads and UFOs on our planet. This can be compared to how a glass lowered into water leaves an indentation. The most notable trace that UFO researchers consider is the water nest known as the Tully nest, which was observed in northern Australia in January 1966. The story of the Tully nest became one of the most publicized in Australia, receiving a response comparable to the Roswell incident in the United States, involving numerous people, the army, the press, and attracting tourists. People traveled to the Tully nest to see the place where UFOs appeared directly from beneath the ground. Over the last 10 years, Australian researcher Bill Chalker has conducted a thorough investigation of the Tully phenomenon. At 9 o'clock in the morning on the 19th of January 1966, young farmer George Pedley was driving a tractor across a plot of land in an area known as Laguna Podkova in northern Queensland. Suddenly, George began to have trouble with the tractor, which seemed to be slipping and was about to stall. At that moment, he heard a high-pitched whistling sound and looked in its direction. At a distance of 6 to 9 meters from him, a metallic object in the shape of a disc was rising from the lagoon. He reached a height of 9-12 meters, then went into a gentle dive and soared upward at high speed. George described the object as two giant soup plates stacked one on top of the other, 9 meters wide and 12 meters high. For several weeks, this event remained a sensation for the press, and journalists reported from the scene, covering the incident even in foreign media. Newspapers referred to the area as the nest of flying saucers. In the nest, evidence of the landing of the UFO was discovered, a clear imprint on the surface of the lagoon. The swirling effect in the water persisted for several days and was investigated by sailors and scientists. Numerous studies were conducted and all sorts of theories were proposed, but no one was able to explain the presence of traces on the water. In numerous interviews and studies, Chalker referred to George Pedley as a reliable witness to the appearance of a unique UFO. He described him as a typical resident of northern Queensland, of a farming nature from whom pranks would not be expected. In the following weeks, during various public and private investigations in the Tully area, at least half a dozen other aquatic nests were discovered. Water samples were sent to the laboratory of the physics department of the University of Brisbane to measure the radiation background, but a few days later, the samples mysteriously disappeared. The investigation of the cases in Tully continues to this day. Observing the many unidentified underwater objects in the past and future, many wonder, why are they here and what will happen next? One researcher, reflecting on the scale of the universe, asserts, "I am sure our universe is vast, with many habitable worlds. Why should we consider ourselves the only intelligent beings?" Some scientists perceive the recent events related to UFOs as ominous. One of them adds, "I think extraterrestrial civilizations have been observing our development over the last 100 years, knowing how great our prospects are and how great the risk is." He emphasizes, "Without a doubt, something is happening. They are hiding it from us. They are lying to us." With a sense of caution, he expresses a desire. "I would like to come to a hearing in Congress and stop the flow of nonsense to see what is going on." The question he raises sounds alarming. Does this mean that certain events, cataclysms, the end of the world are coming to planet Earth, and the UFO is coming to Earth because Earth is in danger? He contemplates the possible consequences. Perhaps we are bringing about the end of the world.